Come on, babe. Me and the boys are not gonna go fight a Triceratops tonight. 4 beers later. Come back here, you. Hello and welcome back to another Time Walk Tower Defense devlog. Last time I didn't really get to introduce myself, so my name's Nick. I graduated last year from the U.S. Air Force Academy with a degree in computer science, and I'm currently going through undergraduate pilot training. And while I was waiting to start up pilot training, I made our first release, Loot and Scoot, which is a mobile roguelike game where you adventure through dungeons, collect gold, and evade dangerous monsters. So go check that out if you'd like. Links in the description below. It's available on iOS and Android. So that's me. Let's jump into the devlog. The first big thing I wrapped up these last few weeks is the towers. At long last, I went ahead and coded up the last general tower, and now they're all in the game and ready to be tested. I also created some of the animations for the towers, my favorite of which is the artillery, which turned out super nice using the always famous Unity particle system. So as Alex was explaining last week, we wanted to give each hero and era a kind of a unique feel and play style. For example, the fighter is meant to be super simple so that any player can pick it up and do alright with it.
We face each other as God intended. Sportsmanlike. No tricks, no weapons. Skill against skill alone.
All high fantasy heroes have a ballista single target damage tower, a catapult AoE tower, an ice mage's tower that does a single target slow, and an armory that boosts hero and tower damage. The fighter specifically builds upon these simple towers with a fire breather that shoots in a straight line, a barricade that knocks back enemies, and a barracks that spawns footmen.
What manner of man are you that can summon up fire without flint or tinder?
I am an enchanter.
By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
The wizard, on the other hand, puts more emphasis on boosting the hero. The wizard has a mana well that regenerates mana based on how close they are to the tower, a mana spire that increases the wizard's split mana pool globally, and a conduit that increases the potency and mana cost of the wizard's abilities globally. This hero requires a lot more strategic gameplay and is for a more advanced player. Now we have 2 more eras and 4 more heroes coming out, so keep an eye out for those in future devlogs and once the game eventually releases. The next big project, which you may have caught snippets of throughout the video, was marrying up the tower defense part of the game with the third-person controller.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
This actually turned out to be fairly simple. I just had to switch out some cameras and scripts, and voila, we're in builder mode while the wave is counting down, and we're in fighter mode while there are enemies on the map. This made the game playable, which was super cool to see our concept in action. So as Emily mentioned a few weeks ago, we've been having some meetings to flesh out the enemies for our game. Now she's been working on the artwork for them, and I've been working on the code, and they're almost done. So let me show you guys my process when making those. Now, when I was working on these guys, I got a lot smarter than what I did on the towers. I went with an inheritance model instead of the abomination of a script that I made that encompassed all towers, because my turret script was getting a little, thick. The inheritance model made making these enemies way more straightforward and made the process super quick and easy. For each enemy, I would simply inherit whatever functions I needed to overwrite and add whatever I needed to the already existing scripts. We designed these enemies with the idea of making the player make decisions and reward the player for playing strategically and understanding their enemies. This also allows us as the designers to create interesting and engaging levels for the player to interact with. Some of the more unique enemies include the Saboteur that throws a bomb at the player that stuns them, the Crocodile that gets faster as he moves along, and the Chrono Assassin that jumps every other waypoint. At the beginning of each level, we're going to display what enemies the player should expect to see so that they can make informed decisions about how they will deploy their towers and their hero. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to wrap up the last remaining enemies, which I'm super excited to show you guys. We've got the Deck Swabber that slows enemies as you go. We've got the Time Lost Chieftain that requires you to hit him in certain spots. And of course, we have Space Emperor Zoj, our final boss. But you guys are just going to have to play the game to see what he does.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay?
So I wanted to take a minute at the end of the video here to talk about something really, really important for both us and everyone making games, and that is scope. Now, we had a meeting earlier this week where we talked about the structure of our campaign and how we want it to all kind of flow. So we had all these grand ideas swirling around, like we're going to have this massive campaign, we're going to have 5 different campaigns with 10 missions each, 30-minute missions. It's going to be epic, and it really would be, but that'd be a behemoth so large it would take us a year to finish. And we have a game on the backlog, so that won't really work. Now, we could get that size of a game out, but then it would hugely compromise the quality of each of those missions. And we just weren't quite willing to compromise the quality of our game. So we decided to trim it on down. We're going still with 5 campaigns, but they're going to have 6 missions each about 15 to 20 minutes. That way we can reasonably balance, test, and get everything super finely tuned. Because in our opinion, it's way more worth getting out 7 hours of finely tuned, solid gameplay, rather than having 15 hours of just not so good gameplay. So that's something everyone should really keep in the back of their head if you're working on games. It's kind of become the industry standard lately that games have to be 20, 30, 40 hours long, which just isn't quite practical for a small team or even a single person to create. So we as indie developers have to think about that when we are making our games, because it's so much more important that you get a game out than spending years and years and years trying to perfect this monster 30-hour game that you just never quite finish. So it's much better to get a product that's reasonable, gets your core game idea across, and is able to be released than to worry about hitting some magical time limit that people are going to expect your game to be. Thomas Brush and David Welly have a really good interview on this. I'll drop a link below in the description. It's all about being willing to compromise your vision and get out your game, but willing to cut stuff as you go to avoid that feature creep that inevitably builds up over time as you're working on a game. I'll drop a link to the interview in the description below, and if you're interested in talking about more game dev principles on this channel, let us know in the comments below. As I mentioned before, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up those last few enemies this week, and then I'm going to move into play balancing the game. As of right now, all the values in the game are essentially arbitrary. Values like damage, cost, health, they're all just placeholders so that we could test out the game. Now we're going to go to assign meaningful values to those so that we can begin to play balance and make levels and really bring this game all together. And I believe this may be the most important step for us, so we're really going to take our time here and do it right. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and keep an eye out because our Steam page should be up this week. So go out there and wishlist Time Walk Tower Defense. We'll see you next time, and as always, game on.